Jodah the Unifier is one of those commanders that looks like it more or less builds itself. It's clearly designed to be an absolute powerhouse of a commander. You get this massive anthem effect plus an absurd value engine with the legendary cascade, and on top of that you get access to all 5 colors. You could just fill your deck with a lot of powerful legends and legends matter stuff and you'd end up with a super solid deck, thanks to the heavy support we've gotten for this theme lately. While legends can be a standalone theme, it can also function as more of an umbrella thing, with the possibility of having like all sorts of different themes within the legends theme. So in this video I'll be going over 3 different ways of building Jodah the Unifier that aren't just like legends matter.dck. Before we break down the different builds, I'll quickly cover some Jodah essentials. First off, no matter how you slice it, you do need a certain amount of legendary spells in order to consistently trigger Jodah's cascade ability. As a result of that fact, there's a handful of cards that are probably just staples regardless of how the rest of your deck is built. These are cards like the Lighted Halfling, Reki, the History of Kamigawa, Captain Sisei, Mithril Code, and Plaza of Heroes and Great Hall of the Citadel for the mana base. Additionally, it's a really good idea to dedicate a certain amount of deck slots to manipulating the top of your library so you get to control what you cascade into. Tutors such as Vampiric Tutor and Worldly Tutor are great ways to accomplish this. I'd probably also consider cards like Brainstorm, Sensei's Divining Top, Sylvan Library, Noxious Revival, and Scroll Rack. Now let's talk some Jodah builds. In addition to building around the Legends theme, you can also go down the Tribal or Kindred or Typal path, whatever term you prefer to use. I'll personally stick with Tribal throughout this video for the sake of simplicity. The cool thing about leaning into the Tribal strategy is that in addition to all your Legends payoffs, you get access to a pool of incredibly powerful Tribal payoff cards that aren't necessarily legendary or care about anything being legendary. There are like hundreds of creature types you could build around. However, humans seem to be an obvious choice as there are a plethora of powerful legendary as well as non-legendary humans and humans matter cards to choose from, and also Jodah is on tribe being a human himself. Then there are of course all the cards that are payoffs for a creature type of choice, some of which are really good cards. And I mean, whether you're building like goblins or angels or Phyrexians or anything else, in the case of a card such as like Roaming Throne, you'd still just have the option to name human or wizard just to get double legendary cascade triggers out of Jodah. And of course we gotta also mention changelings whenever we're building decks around one or more creature types. Lastly, I'd like to point out that just like the Legends theme, there are a lot of creature types that likewise have this umbrella thing going. Just within the human tribe, you can build like go wide aggro, you can build hate bears, you can build a +1/+1 counters matters deck, or even go in the direction of something like a blink deck, just to name a few of many possible secondary themes. While Jodah's Anthem effect specifically cares about legendary creatures, his legendary Cascade clause works with any legendary spell, which makes him an interesting option for a Super Friends commander. It can be a bit tricky to make Planeswalkers work in a game of Commander, since they are of course a lot harder to protect against 3 opponents as opposed to just 1. And the true power of Planeswalkers lies in their ability to sit on the battlefield and keep accumulating value over time. Therefore, it's absolutely critical that you can protect them, so you get more than just 1 activation out of each walker. Another important thing to keep in mind here is that Planeswalkers are typically rather expensive in terms of mana value, which makes it difficult to actually amass a board state where your walkers aren't just getting run over. Jodah's Cascade ability makes it easier to develop the board enough in a single turn, so that's not as likely to happen, which makes him an interesting Super Friends commander in my opinion. There are also a decent amount of legendary creatures that would make a lot of sense to include in such a build, so it's not like the Anthem effect is necessarily gonna be reduced to just flavor text. In addition, there are also all sorts of other legendary permanents that would fit this build perfectly, so hitting a healthy amount of legendary spells to consistently be able to cascade is certainly not gonna be an issue. This one's probably my personal favorite of these builds. The idea is that you essentially build a Prosper deck, but it's Legends and it's all 5 colors. Jodah's legendary Cascade lets you cast things from exile all the time, and there happens to actually be a lot of Legends that synergize perfectly with this theme. Getting to cascade like this more or less whenever you cast a spell is already an amazing value engine, but I really like the idea of just going all in on this effect, just to try and see how much free value is it possible to squeeze out of casting a single spell. Alright, so So imagine this, we've got Jodah in play alongside Kellen the Kid and Prosper Tomebound. Now imagine what happens when you cast, let's say, the Great Henge, which costs 3 in this scenario. Jodah triggers with the Great Henge on the stack, cascading into something with a mana value 8 or less, for example, an entirely Primal Conqueror that you cast from exile. Prosper triggers and you make a treasure. Kellen triggers, letting you cast a permanent of mana value 7 or less from your hand for free, which could be something like a Chromatic Orrery, let's say. That triggers Jodah again, giving you another cascade into something of mana value 6 or less, which would then trigger both Prosper and Kellen again. At this point, both the Great Henge, Italy, and Chromatic Orrery have yet to resolve, and you can probably see how absurd this gets once that happens. This particular scenario might seem a little bit pie in the sky-ish, and while it is likely an above average outcome, let's say, it's also not that unrealistic to pull off something similar. Just having Jodah and Kellen in play can quickly spin the game out of control and just completely overwhelm the table. Alright, I hope you found this video useful and that it provided you with a little bit of inspiration for your own deck building. Let me know which build you like the most down in the comments, and if you have a spicy Jodah brew yourself, I'd love if you'd leave it down there as well. Thank you kindly for the view, happy brewing, and until next time.